You started out in publishing. When did you begin thinking about doing journalism?
Look, I started out in publishing. In fact, first of all, I started out doing arts law, and then I deferred from my last 2 years of a law degree, and I thought I wanted to work in publishing. But look, it's one of those things where I honestly met somebody at a party who said they'd just got a cadetship at the Sydney Morning Herald, and it was like a light bulb going off. I thought, oh, that's what I should do. So the next year, when the cadetships came up, I rang her up and got the lowdown about what you had to do, and I loved it, loved every minute of it. And she hated journalism and became an academic at Sydney Uni. So it's not for everyone.
Was it a difficult decision to change your career?
How I got into investigative journalism was I was then dispatched to do to write the sort of like the gossip column of, at the time, the Sydney Morning Herald had an Eastern Suburbs Herald, so there was a gossip column which chronicled all the goings on of the Eastern Suburbs society matrons, and it was so appalling. It was in the 80s and everyone had sort of blonde bouffant hair and big shoulder pads. So I decided that it would be fun to pick something completely the opposite. So I chose to go to the Wentworth Park greyhound races, and while I was there, all the men were wearing flannelette shirts and Ugg boots, and the women were wearing velour tracky dacks. So there was one man there in a suit, and he had big hair and glasses. And as I followed him around, every race he bet on was a winner. It later turned out he was the prisons minister, and he went to jail for corruption. So I think he had a little bit of inside knowledge on the dish lickers at the same time. And so I think doing those kind of things I just found infinitely more interesting. Just looking at how society really works, looking at the underlying things that happen that you just don't see on the surface.
Okay. And did you think from the beginning that you wanted to do investigative journalism, or was it just when you started?
No, I think I stumbled into it, and also after I'd been here as a cadet for a year and a half, I got offered a job on Four Corners as a researcher. So I went there, and that was my first real introduction to long-form journalism. And I worked with Paul Barry uncovering Alan Bond. And I just found, like spending 6 weeks on something was just really interesting. So I decided to come back to the Herald, and I virtually decided that that's the kind of thing that I wanted to do.
After He Must Be a Bee was published, the book had to be pulped.
Yep.
Because of the misidentification of Christopher Brown. How did that happen?
So my book, He Who Must Be Obeyed, was pulped in August last year. It was possibly the worst day of my entire life, and I have no one to blame but myself. So I had done my first investigative piece on Eddie Obeid was about 14 years earlier. And I'd been told that John Brown, who was then a minister in the federal government, that he had an interest in Eddie Obeid's ski lodge. He had a hidden interest. I go and do a company search, and there is Chris Brown. He's got a son called Chris Brown. I thought, that's it. That's how he's done it. Well, it was the wrong Chris Brown. And when I came to do the book, I thought we had already published that, and it was wrong. But anyway, the book is back out on the shelves now, so thank God.
Do you feel that journalism is threatened by citizen journalism?
Citizen journalism is a fantastic thing, but unfortunately you do need the backing of major organisations, especially legally, when you do the kind of stories that I do. I mean, the Herald will always put you up in a safe house when you're being threatened. And more than that, it's the legal threats. If you were a citizen journalist and you lost a defamation case, you were going to lose your house. So unless you've got somebody supporting you, it's almost impossible to do stories that take on the rich and powerful unless you've got backing.
So going back to the threats, what effect did receiving the threats have on your life, especially with the decision to not to give in to them?
Look, it say that threats don't worry you, you would be lying. I mean, of course they worry you, and you worry more about your family, you worry about the impact on them. But my view is that people don't actually really want to kill you, at least that's what I tell myself. They want you to stop what you're doing. It's a form of bullying. And I think if you give in to that kind of behaviour, you may as well not do what you do.
Okay. Thank you.
Pleasure.